Hey, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of Health360 Pro. I'm really excited to dive into today's topic because it's something that I think we all think about at some point in our lives, but rarely take the time to truly explore. Today we're talking about longevity. How to live longer, not just in years, but in the quality of those years. You know, the kind of life where you wake up feeling good, energized, and ready to take on the world. And the kind of life where you still have that spark when you hit your 80s or 90s, maybe even beyond. Now, if I told you that there are entire communities around the world where people regularly live to be over 100, would you be interested? I don't know about you, but when I heard that, I was fascinated. I mean, we hear the term living longer all the time, right? But what does that really mean? For most people, living longer is more about avoiding disease, managing weight, and keeping up with a hectic world that never seems to slow down. But what if there's more to it? What if the secret to living longer, healthier lives isn't just about staying away from sickness, but about actually embracing a lifestyle that actively extends our lifespan? Here's something that will make you stop and think for a moment. According to the World Health Organization, the average life expectancy globally is about 72 years. But here's the kicker. In some parts of the world, people are living way past that. I'm talking 90s, even hundreds, and not just barely hanging on. They're living vibrant, full lives. Imagine that for a second. What if you could wake up every day at 80, 90, or even 100, still moving, still smiling, still doing the things that make you happy? I know it might sound a little bit like something out of a fairy tale, but I'm here to tell you that this isn't just a fantasy. There are real places in the world, known as blue zones, where people live longer than anywhere else on the planet. And these people aren't just lucky, they're doing something right. And guess what? It's not just their genes or some miracle pill they're taking. They're living in ways that, for the most part, are totally within our reach. That's the exciting part. You don't need a magic formula, but you do need to understand the choices these people are making and start thinking about how you can incorporate them into your own life. Let me tell you a little bit about these blue zones. These are 5 regions around the world where people consistently live longer, healthier lives. We're talking about places like Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, Ikaria in Greece, Nicoya in Costa Rica, and Loma Linda in California. The people who live there don't have secret diets or crazy exercise routines. They're just living in a way that aligns with their biology, their environment, and their social structures. They live in harmony with their surroundings, and as a result, they thrive. But here's the kicker. These people don't just live long lives, they live well. They're not bedridden by the time they hit their 70s. They're active, they're engaged, and they're part of their communities. That's what we should all be striving for, right? It's not just about tacking on a few extra years. It's about how we live those years. Can you imagine hitting your 70s and still feeling physically and mentally sharp? Still able to engage with your family, friends, and community? Still enjoying your favorite hobbies, whether it's gardening, walking, reading, or traveling? And here's something even more interesting. While science hasn't pinpointed one exact reason why people in these regions live longer, researchers have discovered a few key patterns that these communities share. It's the way they eat, the way they move, the way they connect with others, and the way they approach life itself. These are the factors that we can control, that we can choose to adopt in our own lives. It's not about waiting for a miracle cure or hoping that we'll be one of the lucky few who just happens to age well. It's about understanding what's working for these people and making those habits part of our own daily routines. What I want to dive into today is exactly that, the secrets behind longevity. We'll take a closer look at the habits, practices, and mindsets that have helped these people thrive well into their 90s and beyond. But we're not going to just talk theory here. This isn't some academic exercise. This is about real, actionable steps that you can start implementing today to take charge of your health, your life, and your future. You see, longevity isn't just about diet or exercise. It's about balance. And balance is something that I think is so easily overlooked in today's fast-paced world. We're told to go hard or go home, that we need to be constantly chasing productivity and achievement. But here's what these long-lived communities understand. True health and longevity come when we embrace a holistic lifestyle, one that nourishes our bodies, minds, and relationships. Let's take a moment to think about this. How many of us feel like we're constantly battling with stress, trying to keep up with endless to-do lists, working ourselves into the ground just to stay afloat? And when you throw health issues like high blood pressure, joint pain, or even just chronic fatigue into the mix, it's easy to see why we're so far removed from these long-lived communities. But what if we could change that? What if we could live our lives with a sense of purpose, with stronger social connections, with a better understanding of what fuels our bodies and minds? And more importantly, what if we could do it in a way that doesn't feel like another health trend or quick fix? The beauty of the Blue Zone's lifestyle is that it's sustainable. It's not about cutting out every food you love or spending hours at the gym. It's about making small, consistent choices that, over time, add up to something extraordinary. So let's take this journey together. Over the next hour, we're going to explore the key secrets to living longer and living well. We're going to break down the science behind these habits and give you practical tips on how to integrate them into your own life. We'll talk about the diet, the movement, the social connections, and the mindset shifts that can lead to a longer, healthier life. Because the truth is, you don't have to wait until tomorrow to start making these changes. You can begin today. And before we jump in, I want you to think about this question for a moment. What if you could live to 100 and do so in a way that feels fulfilling, joyful, and full of energy? What would that life look like for you? What would it feel like to wake up every day knowing that you're actively shaping the future, not just waiting for it to happen? All right, let's get started. The road to a longer, healthier life starts now. So now that we've set the stage and talked about the importance of living longer and living well, let's take a deeper dive into the people who've been getting this right for centuries. Let's talk about who these people are, where in the world are the healthiest, longest living individuals living, and what makes their lives so special. Let me take you on a bit of a journey across the globe. We're going to start with a place you've probably heard of, Okinawa, Japan. Okinawa is home to one of the longest living populations on Earth. But what's interesting isn't just their longevity, but the way they live. If you were to visit Okinawa today, you'd see a community where the elderly are still walking around with energy, tending their gardens, socializing with friends, and enjoying life in ways that might seem unimaginable if you're looking at your own life right now, trying to figure out how to even make it to 70 without feeling worn out. But it's not just luck that has Okinawans living to 100, 110, and beyond. There are some really striking habits that we can learn from. Take their diet, for example. It's not just about what they eat, but about how much they eat. There's a saying in Okinawa, hara hachi bu, which means eat until you're 80% full. It's a philosophy rooted in the idea of moderation. It's not about cutting out foods or starving yourself, but about finding balance. And here's something even more interesting. The majority of their food comes from plant-based sources. Yes, they eat some fish, but the star of their meals is often vegetables, tofu, and other plant-based proteins. You'll see lots of sweet potatoes, green leafy vegetables, and soy, which are packed with nutrients and antioxidants. It's a diet designed to keep inflammation down, protect against chronic diseases, and nourish the body over time. Now, let's jump across the world to a small island in Greece called Ikaria. The people here have one of the highest rates of people reaching 90 years and beyond. And they're not just hanging on by a thread, they're thriving. People in Ikaria live at a pace that seems almost foreign to our fast-paced lives. They don't rush. In fact, they have an expression that literally translates to, "the time will come." Everything is done at its own pace, whether it's meals, work, or even socializing. They don't rush through life, and this approach to time is key to their well-being. The food in Ikaria is also Mediterranean through and through. You'll find olive oil, fish, fruits, vegetables, and a healthy amount of herbal teas. But what's more remarkable than the food itself is their connection to it. Meals are shared with family and friends, sometimes lasting for hours. It's not just about nourishing the body, it's about nourishing the soul, and that, right there, is something we often overlook in our own busy lives, the power of connection and shared experiences. Now, let's take a trip to another part of the world, to the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica. This region has a significant number of people who live well into their 90s, often in great health. What's the secret here? Again, it's a combination of things, but one key factor is the strong sense of purpose. In Nicoya, there's something called plan de vida, which translates to life plan. People in this region tend to have a clear sense of purpose, whether it's caring for grandchildren, working the land, or staying connected with their community. They wake up every day with something to look forward to, and this sense of purpose helps them maintain their mental and physical health. But the people of Nicoya also have something else going for them. They drink hard water, which is naturally rich in calcium and magnesium, two minerals that are believed to help protect against heart disease and strengthen bones. This is just one more example of how their environment supports their health, and it's something we might overlook when thinking about longevity. It's not just about individual choices, but how our environment and lifestyle come together to help us live our best lives. We're not done yet. There's also a place in Italy, the mountainous region of Sardinia, which boasts a number of centenarians, people who live to be 100 or older. And just like the others, it's not just about luck, and it's not just about genetics. Sardinians live a very active life, and I'm not talking about hitting the gym for an hour every day. I'm talking about natural movement, walking up hills, working in the vineyards, and staying active in daily life. In fact, many of the elderly Sardinians walk more every day than the average person in the US. Despite being decades older, it's this regular, low-intensity movement that keeps their bodies in top shape well into their golden years. But Sardinians also have something else, a very close-knit community. They live surrounded by family, and that connection to their loved ones plays a huge role in their longevity. Social bonds are a huge factor in how long we live, and Sardinians, like people in other blue zones, place a high value on family and community. And finally, let's talk about Loma Linda, California, home to a group of Adventists who also live significantly longer than the average American. This community is particularly interesting because they don't consume alcohol, caffeine, or tobacco, which automatically gives them an edge when it comes to longevity. But it's not just the absence of harmful habits, it's the presence of healthy ones. Adventists follow a plant-based diet with a focus on nuts, grains, fruits, and vegetables. They also place a strong emphasis on physical activity and rest. But what's perhaps the most remarkable thing about Loma Linda is the sense of spirituality and community. For these people, faith and a sense of belonging to something bigger than themselves play an important role in their well-being. Across all of these blue zones, whether it's Okinawa, Ikaria, Nicoya, Sardinia, or Loma Linda, there are common threads that run through them. It's not just about living longer, it's about living better. It's about finding meaning in your life, staying active, nurturing strong social connections, and eating foods that nourish your body and keep it strong. These are people who live each day with intention and who've built lives that support their well-being in a sustainable, long-term way. But here's the thing. These habits aren't just for people in faraway places. They're for all of us. What I love about studying blue zones is that it shows us that longevity isn't something that happens by accident. It's a product of the way we live. It's a product of the small choices we make every single day, whether it's how we eat, how we move, or how we connect with others. And the best part is, you don't have to change everything overnight. You don't have to move to a remote island or drastically overhaul your entire lifestyle. What you can do is start small, start today, and start with the things that are within your control. So, as we move forward in this episode, keep this in mind. The people who live the longest don't do anything particularly extraordinary. They just do the everyday things, and they do them consistently. The choices they make are deeply rooted in their culture, their environment, and the way they see the world. And while we might not be able to replicate everything about these communities, after all, we don't all live in Sardinia or Okinawa, we can absolutely take lessons from them. And those lessons are the key to unlocking a longer, healthier life. I want you to think about this for a second. What could your life look like if you started making just a few small changes today? What would happen if you started eating a little differently, moving a little more, and connecting with the people around you in a deeper way? How would your future self thank you for it? That's the power of this. It's not about huge leaps, but steady, manageable steps. And I think that's what's so inspiring about these blue zones. These aren't people who are working with a miracle formula. They're just living intentionally and making the right choices day after day. And guess what? You can too. So, in the next part of this episode, we're going to take a closer look at the specific habits that these long-lived communities follow, what they eat, how they move, and how they cultivate the kind of deep, meaningful relationships that are proven to help us live longer. And as we explore that, I want you to start thinking about how you can bring some of these practices into your own life. Because if they can do it, so can you. I want to dive deeper now into the secrets behind these long-lived communities, because it's not just about the places they live or the things they don't do. It's about the specific habits that help them thrive. When you really start looking at how these people live, you see that they have figured out something that many of us have forgotten. And it's not about fancy diets, extreme fitness regimens, or the latest wellness trends. No, it's something simpler, something that's been tested over time. So let's take a closer look at how they eat, how they move, and how they maintain deep connections with others. Let's talk about food first. In these blue zones, the people who live the longest and healthiest lives aren't counting calories or obsessing over macronutrients. They aren't following the latest diet craze that promises to shed 20 pounds in 30 days. What they are doing is eating real, whole food, and they're eating it in moderation. In Okinawa, for instance, their traditional diet is centered around sweet potatoes, tofu, and other plant-based foods. Sure, there's fish on the menu too, but it's not the centerpiece of the meal. They prioritize vegetables and legumes, simple, nutrient-dense foods that support their long-term health. And here's the key thing: they don't overeat. Their meals are balanced, and they practice portion control naturally. They stop eating when they're 80% full, and that simple practice is powerful. You see, overeating doesn't just fill your stomach. It's a key contributor to many of the chronic diseases that shorten our lives. It stresses the body, inflames tissues, and makes it harder for your organs to function optimally. So, by eating just enough, 80% full, they allow their bodies to digest more easily, absorb nutrients efficiently, and avoid the wear and tear that comes with constant overeating. In Ikaria, Greece, they follow a similar pattern. The Mediterranean diet is rich in olive oil, vegetables, and legumes. There's a lot of fresh fruit, whole grains, and a small amount of meat, mostly in the form of lamb. But again, it's not about loading up on meat at every meal. It's about balance and variety. They drink herbal teas, which are packed with antioxidants, and they incorporate a bit of red wine into their lives, typically shared with friends during meals. There's no obsession with strict rules about what to eat or when to eat. It's more about being in tune with the body's natural rhythms and letting food be a source of nourishment and joy. What's fascinating is that in Ikaria, they don't experience much of the chronic diseases that plague many Western countries. Heart disease, diabetes, and dementia are much less common in Ikaria than in other parts of the world, even though the people there are getting older. So, what does that tell us? It tells us that it's not just about what we eat, it's about how we approach food, how we integrate it into our lives, and how we make it part of a larger lifestyle that values quality over quantity. In the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, the secret seems to lie in their relationship with food and the land. The people here eat a lot of beans, corn, and squash, as well as tropical fruits like papayas and bananas. Their diet is simple, and it's rooted in the local environment. They eat food that's available, local, and fresh. What stands out in Nicoya is the lack of processed foods. There's no drive-through culture, no fast food chains on every corner. Instead, they eat the food they grow, and they share meals with their families. There's a sense of reverence for food here, a recognition that food sustains not just the body, but the spirit. They live in harmony with the land, and that's reflected in their health. They're not overloading their bodies with additives, preservatives, or synthetic ingredients. Their food is simple, unprocessed, and packed with nutrients. And in many ways, that simplicity is the key to their vitality. Then there's Sardinia. The island of Sardinia, particularly the mountainous regions, is known for producing a significant number of centenarians. And if you look closely at their diet, it's clear why. Sardinians eat a lot of vegetables, legumes, and grains. Their meals are centered around foods like beans, peas, and barley, with a modest amount of meat, typically pork, which is served in small portions. A standout in the Sardinian diet is their emphasis on whole foods and locally grown produce. But what's particularly interesting is that Sardinians also make sure to eat with others. Social connection is an essential part of their meals, and they take time to enjoy their food in the company of friends and family. Food is not just fuel, it's a way to connect, to share, and to celebrate life. The meals are not rushed, and they're not eaten while multitasking. They're a time to sit, relax, and savor. This mindful approach to eating, combined with a diet rich in plant-based foods, is a huge factor in why Sardinians live so long and remain so healthy. So, we've talked a lot about the food, But there's another piece to this puzzle: the way these communities move. It's not about hitting the gym 6 times a week or running marathons. Instead, it's about moving naturally throughout the day. In Okinawa, people are up early, doing light stretches, gardening, and walking. The daily rhythm of life involves a lot of low-intensity physical activity. And the beauty of this approach is that it's not something people have to force. Movement is part of their lifestyle. They're not going out of their way to exercise. They're simply staying active because it's part of the way they live. They walk to the store, they do physical tasks around the house or garden, and they stay on their feet. This low-impact, consistent movement throughout the day keeps their bodies functioning at a high level without the need for intense workout regimens. The same can be said for the people of Ikaria, who walk up and down hills and remain active in their communities as they age. In Nicoya, the people still work the land well into their 80s and 90s. It's this constant movement, this natural way of staying active, that keeps them strong and healthy. And then, of course, there's Sardinia, where the physical labor is often a part of daily life. Many of the centenarians in Sardinia work in the fields, tend to livestock, or help with the harvest. This physical activity is part of their routine, and it's not forced. It's just what they do, day in and day out. This is why it's so important to remember that longevity isn't just about hitting certain exercise targets or trying to fit in a specific number of gym sessions every week. It's about creating a lifestyle that naturally includes movement, something that feels natural and enjoyable, rather than something that feels like a chore. But here's the real kicker: the social connections. The social fabric of these communities is incredibly strong. People in these blue zones don't just live longer, they thrive because they are deeply connected to others. In Okinawa, the people form social networks called moais, which are groups of friends who commit to supporting each other throughout their lives. These moais provide not just companionship, but also emotional support. They help each other through tough times and celebrate the good times. This sense of community and connection is key to their mental and physical well-being. It's no surprise that loneliness has been linked to an increased risk of chronic disease, while strong social ties can actually lower the risk of early death. This connection to others provides a sense of purpose, belonging, and happiness that is essential for living a long, healthy life. In Ikaria, the people have a very similar attitude towards socializing. Meals are a communal activity, often shared with family and friends, and this sense of togetherness is central to their way of life. It's about more than just food. It's about the joy and the comfort that comes from being with others. The same is true in Nicoya, where family plays a huge role in daily life. Older adults in Nicoya spend a lot of time with their children and grandchildren, helping to raise the next generation. This strong family bond is a huge factor in their longevity. Sardinians also have a deep sense of family and community. The elders are often the head of the family, and their wisdom is highly valued. They are active participants in the family's daily life, and they're involved in the upbringing of grandchildren, which helps them stay mentally sharp and emotionally fulfilled. The importance of community cannot be overstated. These people have found a balance between taking care of themselves, staying physically active, and maintaining close, meaningful relationships. As we wrap up this segment, I want you to reflect on this. How are you incorporating community into your life? Are you finding ways to stay active without forcing yourself into a rigid routine? And what about your diet? Are you nourishing your body with whole, plant-based foods that promote long-term health? You see, the beauty of these blue zones is that the longevity they enjoy isn't reserved for a select few. It's accessible to all of us. The key is understanding what works, what's sustainable, and what can be integrated into our own lives. As we move forward in this episode, we're going to dive into the science behind these habits, why they work, and how you can apply them in your own life to boost your health and longevity. So, stick around because we're just getting started. Now that we've explored some of the remarkable communities where people live longer, healthier lives, I want to dive into why these habits work so well and why they've allowed these long-lived populations to thrive for generations. It's not just coincidence. There's a science behind this, a deeper understanding of the body's inner workings and how lifestyle choices, simple choices really, can profoundly affect our health and longevity. When we take a step back and look at the habits of people in these blue zones, what's truly fascinating is how deeply connected they are to the science of longevity. It's not just about what they eat, or how they move, or who they spend time with. It's all about how these behaviors impact our biology on a cellular level. Let's start with diet. If you think about it, food is one of the most direct ways we interact with our environment. What we eat, how much we eat, and when we eat have a profound impact on how our bodies function. And we know now that diet plays a central role in everything from metabolism to immune function to aging itself. In fact, research has shown that the right diet can help us slow down the aging process, reduce the risk of chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and even Alzheimer's, and improve our overall quality of life as we age. But there's no need to complicate things. You don't need to follow the latest trendy diet or count every calorie. The people in these blue zones aren't obsessing over their food. They simply focus on eating nutrient-dense, whole foods that provide their bodies with the fuel they need. There's a reason why plant-based diets like those in Okinawa and Ikaria are associated with longevity. They're rich in antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals that help reduce inflammation, protect against oxidative stress, and keep our cells functioning at their best. In fact, studies have shown that a plant-rich diet can help reduce the risk of chronic disease by supporting the body's natural defenses. But here's the interesting part. It's not just about what they eat, it's about what they don't eat. People in these regions tend to avoid processed foods, refined sugars, and anything that can cause a spike in insulin, a hormone that's associated with aging and disease when it's out of balance. Insulin, as it turns out, plays a significant role in aging. High levels of insulin, which happen when we eat too many processed foods or sugars, can accelerate the aging process, promote fat storage, and even contribute to diseases like type 2, diabetes, and heart disease. So, by eating foods that don't cause these insulin spikes, people in blue zones are doing themselves a huge favor. They're not necessarily trying to live longer. They're simply eating the kinds of foods that keep their bodies in balance and functioning well over time. But it's not just about diet. Movement is also a critical piece of the puzzle. Now, I know you've probably heard a million times how important exercise is for your health, but hear me out. It's not just about hitting the gym or running 5 miles a day. The people in blue zones aren't doing high-intensity workouts, but they're moving constantly, naturally. Their daily lives are filled with walking, gardening, carrying groceries, climbing hills, working in the fields. It's all about staying active throughout the day, rather than putting in 1 or 2 hours of intense exercise and then sitting for the rest of the day. This constant low-impact movement helps maintain muscle mass, keeps the joints flexible, and supports healthy cardiovascular function. And let's not forget about the mental benefits. Regular physical activity is one of the best ways to reduce stress, improve mood, and protect against mental decline as we age. There's a growing body of evidence showing that being physically active can help preserve brain health and reduce the risk of Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative diseases. In other words, when you move, your brain moves. And that's a big part of why these long-lived people are so mentally sharp, well into their 90s and even hundreds. But there's one more thing that I want to focus on that I think is perhaps the most overlooked, but also the most powerful habit of all. And that's the power of social connection. You've probably heard the phrase, loneliness kills, and it turns out that's not an exaggeration. Research has shown that social isolation can be just as harmful to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases your risk of heart disease, dementia, and premature death. But when you look at these blue zones, you see something else. Deep, meaningful connections between people. It's not just about having a few friends or acquaintances. It's about being embedded in a community where you feel loved, supported, and needed. In Okinawa, the people form tight-knit social groups called moais, which are essentially lifelong support networks. These groups provide emotional support, practical help, and a sense of belonging that helps people live happier, healthier lives. And it's not just in Okinawa. In Ikaria, people spend hours together every day, sharing meals, talking, laughing, and living in community. In Sardinia, the elderly are surrounded by family and friends, and they play an active role in the lives of their grandchildren. This strong sense of connection is not just a nice thing to have, it's a key factor in living a long and healthy life. Why does this matter? Well, when we have strong social connections, our bodies produce more oxytocin, the love hormone, which helps reduce stress, lower blood pressure, and improve our immune system. Social connections can also reduce feelings of loneliness and depression. both of which have been linked to a range of health problems, including heart disease and even cancer. So it's clear that the people who live longest aren't just doing it in isolation, they're doing it in relationship with their families, their friends, and their communities. Now, you might be wondering, that all sounds great, but what does this mean for me? How can I apply this science to my own life? Well, I'm glad you asked. The good news is that it doesn't take a major overhaul of your life to start making changes. You don't have to move to Okinawa or Sardinia to reap the benefits of these practices. You can start right where you are, and you can start small. Let's start with food. You don't need to adopt a completely plant-based diet tomorrow, but you can start adding more fruits, vegetables, legumes, and whole grains into your meals. Try reducing the amount of processed foods and sugars you consume. Maybe you can aim to eat more meals at home where you have more control over the ingredients. The key is to make small, sustainable changes that you can stick with in the long term. Next, think about movement. You don't have to become a marathon runner or spend hours at the gym. But could you take a walk after dinner? Could you find ways to move more during the day, like taking the stairs instead of the elevator or walking to the store instead of driving? The goal isn't to put in a hardcore workout every day. It's about incorporating movement into your daily routine in ways that feel natural and enjoyable. And finally, look at your social connections. Are you spending enough time with the people who lift you up and make you feel supported? If not, how can you start fostering those connections? Could you spend more time with family, join a group or club, volunteer in your community? It's about finding ways to surround yourself with people who make you feel connected and supported, because that connection is one of the most powerful things you can do for your health. As we finish up this part of the conversation, I want you to ask yourself this: what small change can you make today? What's one thing you can start doing right now that will move you closer to a longer, healthier life? It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be something that moves you in the right direction. And once you start, you'll begin to see the benefits, and those benefits will encourage you to keep going. So, in the next part of the episode, we'll dive even deeper into how you can incorporate these practices into your daily life in a way that feels doable and sustainable. Because longevity isn't a far-off dream, it's something you can start working toward today. And the more you embrace these habits, the more you'll see that living longer is not just about adding years to your life, but about adding life to your years. Stick with me. We've still got a lot more to explore, and I'm excited to help you get started on this journey. Now that we've explored the incredible science behind the habits of the world's healthiest people, I want to talk about how you can start applying these lessons to your own life. The beauty of all this is that you don't have to wait for the perfect moment to begin. You don't need to overhaul everything at once or make some drastic change that feels out of reach. Instead, you can start small. Think of it as a gradual shift toward a longer, healthier life, rather than a massive transformation that feels impossible. The question I want you to think about now is, what's the first thing that stands out to you about the habits of these long-lived communities? Is it the food, the way they move, or maybe it's the deep connections they share with others? I know that for many of us it can be overwhelming to think about adopting all of these practices. It might even feel like you need to make a huge effort to change your lifestyle. But what I'm here to tell you is that the secret isn't about making one big dramatic change. It's about making small, intentional changes that you can stick to over time. And when you do that, those changes add up in ways you wouldn't even imagine. Let's start with food, because it's something we all have to deal with every single day. Whether we like it or not, the choices we make around food are a huge part of how we feel, how we age, and how long we live. I've talked about how the people in blue zones eat mostly plant-based foods, vegetables, fruits, legumes, and whole grains. They don't obsess over calories or track their macros, but they eat simple, real food that nourishes them. And that's the key. It's about simplicity. They eat in moderation, focusing on whole, unprocessed foods. But here's the kicker. It's not just about eating healthy food. It's about eating the right amounts too. The Okinawans, for example, follow the hara hachi bu principle, which means they stop eating when they're 80% full. Now, I know what you're thinking. How am I supposed to stop eating before I feel full? Well, the truth is that it's not about stuffing yourself until you're completely satisfied. It's about training your body to recognize when it's had enough. We often eat out of habit, or because food is in front of us, or because it's time for a meal. But What would happen if we slowed down and listened to our bodies? If we ate mindfully, savoring each bite and paying attention to how we feel, rather than just rushing through a meal? Now, I'm not suggesting that you need to become obsessive about every bite you take, but what if you started by eating a little slower? What if you took just a few extra minutes to notice how full you really feel before you go for that second serving? Small changes like this can have a big impact on your overall health and longevity. It's about creating awareness around food and finding a balance that works for you. And remember, you don't need to completely overhaul your diet overnight. Start by adding more fruits and vegetables to your meals, or try swapping out some processed foods for whole grains or legumes. Start where you are and build from there. But food isn't just about what goes in your mouth. It's also about how it affects your body. What if I told you that some of the foods we eat every day can actually help slow down the aging process? It's not just about feeling good now. It's about making choices that will benefit you in the long run. For instance, there are studies that show that antioxidants found in fruits like berries or in vegetables like kale and spinach can help protect your cells from damage. This type of cell damage is one of the leading causes of aging. So, by eating a diet rich in these antioxidants, you're not just improving your health today, you're setting yourself up for a longer, healthier life. Now, let's talk about movement. You may have heard this a million times, but it's true. Our bodies are designed to move, and the people in these blue zones aren't spending hours in the gym every day or running marathons. Instead, they're moving naturally as part of their daily routine. Whether it's walking to the market, gardening, or climbing hills, movement is just woven into the fabric of their lives. But here's the thing. Movement doesn't have to be an organized workout. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that we need to follow a strict workout plan, or that we need to do high-intensity exercise every day to stay healthy. But the truth is, simply staying active throughout the day can make a huge difference. And you don't have to run a marathon or lift heavy weights to benefit from it. The key is consistency. The more you move, the better you'll feel, and the more you'll be helping your body maintain its strength and vitality as you age. So, what does that look like for you? Could you start by walking more? Could you take the stairs instead of the elevator? Maybe you could start walking after dinner, or find a hobby that involves moving, like dancing, swimming, or even yoga. It's important to remember that movement is not just about physical fitness. It's about staying strong and healthy in every sense. One of the reasons the people in these long-lived communities stay so healthy is because they keep their bodies moving in ways that feel natural. They're not forcing themselves to work out. They're simply staying active throughout the day. And the best part is that it doesn't take a lot of time or effort to make a difference. So, whether you're taking a walk, stretching, or gardening, just find something that works for you and stick with it. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be something that you enjoy and that you can do consistently. Now, let's move on to something that I think is incredibly powerful: social connections. If you've ever heard the phrase, loneliness kills, you know that having strong social bonds is crucial for our health. And it's not just about having friends or family, it's about being deeply embedded in a community. When we have people to rely on, people who support us and care for us, it's like a safety net for our health. And this isn't just about feeling good in the moment, it's about protecting ourselves from the mental and physical toll of isolation. In blue zones, people have a strong sense of community. In Okinawa, for example, people belong to moais, small social groups that are formed early in life and stick together throughout the years. These groups are there for each other through thick and thin, whether it's celebrating a birthday, helping each other through tough times, or just spending time together. This strong social network provides a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, and a source of emotional support that's crucial for long-term health. And the benefits of these social connections go beyond just emotional well-being. Studies have shown that people who are more socially connected tend to live longer, have better mental health, and even have lower levels of inflammation, which is a major contributor to chronic disease. So, what does that mean for you? How can you build stronger social connections in your own life? It might be about making more time for the people you care about, whether it's family, friends, or a community group. It might be about finding new ways to connect with others, whether that's through a hobby, a social activity, or even just taking the time to check in with someone you haven't spoken to in a while. The key is to make socializing a priority, just like you would any other aspect of your health. The final piece of the puzzle is mindset. The people in these blue zones have a strong sense of purpose, something that gives their lives meaning. It could be family, work, or a hobby that they're passionate about. But what's clear is that having a purpose is key to staying healthy and living longer. Studies have shown that people who have a strong sense of purpose are less likely to experience chronic diseases, and they tend to live longer than those who feel aimless or without direction. So, what's your purpose? What gives your life meaning? It doesn't matter what it is, just that it's something that makes you feel connected to the world around you and drives you to keep moving forward. Now, I know it's not always easy. Life gets busy, and it can be hard to find the time or energy to make all of these changes. But here's the thing. These changes don't have to be huge. They don't need to take over your entire life. They just need to be consistent. Small daily habits that add up over time. And that's the beauty of it. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to do everything at once. You just need to start and then keep going. The best part? You're not doing it alone. You have your community, your family, your friends, and everyone else who's on this journey with you. Together, we can live longer, healthier lives. Not because we've figured out some magic secret, but because we've learned the power of simple, sustainable habits that work. So, as we wrap up this part of our journey, I want you to think about one small change you can make today. One thing you can do right now that will move you in the direction of a longer, healthier life. It doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to be a step forward. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. I'm excited to see what you choose to do, and I can't wait to hear how it transforms your life. You've got this. Now, let's keep moving forward together. I know what you're probably thinking right now. Maybe you've been listening to everything we've talked about so far thinking, this all sounds great, but how do I actually make this happen in my life? Because let's face it, it's one thing to hear about people living to 100 in some faraway place, eating vegetables and walking up hills every day. But it's another to apply this to our own lives. And believe me, I get it. We're busy. We've got a million things on our plate, both literally and figuratively. Work, family, responsibilities, and the pressure to do it all. It's easy to think that making a real change in your lifestyle will be just too much. But here's the thing. The beauty of the habits we've discussed so far is that they're not about overhauling your life in a big, dramatic way. They're about making small, intentional changes that can add up over time. So let's dive into how to make these habits a part of your daily routine without it feeling overwhelming. Let's start with the food part, because that's usually the hardest for most people to navigate. We're all inundated with endless food trends, conflicting advice, and gimmicks that promise quick results. But I'm not here to sell you another magic diet. What I'm offering is the simple truth that has been backed by the centuries-old wisdom of long-lived populations. Eat real, whole foods. This doesn't mean you have to become a gourmet chef or live on salads. The key is balance, moderation, and the understanding that what you eat now will affect how you feel and how you age. For example, the people in the blue zones don't follow some complicated meal plan. They eat what's locally available and what's natural to their region. It's about nourishing the body with foods that give it what it needs without overwhelming it with too much of anything, especially processed foods or sugars. I'm not asking you to give up your favorite foods, but what if, instead of trying to cut everything out, you just started by adding a little more plant-based food to your meals? A handful of leafy greens in your sandwich, a serving of beans or lentils with dinner, or a piece of fruit as a snack. Little changes like this can start shifting your habits toward the kind of diet that promotes long-term health. And here's the key. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Instead of feeling like you need to make a huge change, think about it in terms of small, sustainable steps. Maybe you could replace one sugary snack with something a little more nutritious. Maybe you could have one meatless meal a week, like a big salad or a vegetable stir-fry. You don't need to make every meal perfect. Just make a few adjustments that fit your lifestyle and start from there. The beauty of this approach is that it's not about being perfect. It's about consistency and progress. Now, let's talk movement. This is another area where it's easy to feel overwhelmed. We all know exercise is important, but let's face it, finding time to get to the gym, let alone do a high-intensity workout, can seem impossible, especially if you have a busy schedule. But here's the thing. You don't need to dedicate hours a day to exercise to see benefits. The people in these longevity hotspots aren't spending hours working out. They're simply staying active throughout the day. Think about it this way. Instead of setting aside a chunk of time every day to go to the gym, can you find ways to make your daily life more active? I'm not asking you to run a marathon or lift weights every day. What I'm suggesting is to build movement into your day in natural, enjoyable ways. For example, could you take the stairs instead of the elevator? Maybe you could walk or bike instead of driving short distances. What about taking a walk after dinner or playing a game with your kids? These might seem like small changes, but they add up over time. Movement doesn't have to be intense to be effective. The key is consistency. You don't have to go all out. You just need to make it a habit. Walk, stretch, dance around your living room, do a few yoga poses, whatever works for you. The goal is to stay active in ways that fit into your life, rather than trying to force an hour-long workout into a packed schedule. It's about making movement part of your daily routine, rather than something you fit in when you have the time. And when you start feeling how good it makes you feel, you'll be motivated to keep going. But I know what you're really wondering. How do you actually make these habits stick? How do you stay motivated when life gets busy, when you feel tired, when you're tempted to fall back into old habits? Here's the truth. It's all about mindset. It's about shifting the way you think about these changes. Instead of seeing them as something you have to do or should do, think of them as something you get to do. You have the opportunity to take care of your body, to make choices that will serve you now and in the years to come. And that mindset shift is powerful. One of the biggest obstacles people face when trying to adopt new habits is the feeling that they're not doing it right. We've all been there. You start a new routine, maybe eat healthier for a few days, exercise a little more, and then something happens. Life gets busy, you skip a workout, you eat something you know you shouldn't, and you feel like you've fallen off track. It's easy to get discouraged, but here's the truth. Setbacks are a normal part of the process. The key is to not let them stop you. If you miss a workout or have an indulgent meal, don't let that derail you. Acknowledge it, learn from it, and then keep going. Longevity isn't about perfection. It's about consistency over time. I also want you to think about something else that's just as important as what you eat and how you move, and that's your relationships. I've talked about how social connections play a huge role in the health of people in blue zones, and I think we often overlook just how powerful our connections with others can be. You might have noticed that the people in these communities aren't just living long lives, they're living rich, fulfilling lives filled with love, laughter, and support. And that's something that all of us can strive for, no matter where we are in life. So, I want to challenge you to think about the people in your life, your family, friends, coworkers. Are you nurturing those relationships? Are you spending enough time with the people who make you feel supported, who challenge you to grow, and who encourage you to be your best self? We all have those people in our lives. Maybe it's a spouse, a best friend, a parent, a mentor. But how often do we take the time to really connect with them, to talk, laugh, and share in meaningful ways? Longevity isn't just about what we eat or how much we exercise. It's about feeling connected to others, building relationships that give us a sense of purpose and belonging. And I get it. It can be tough. Life gets busy, we get caught up in our own stuff, and we forget to make time for the people who matter most. But here's the thing. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up, even in small ways. Maybe it's calling a friend you haven't talked to in a while, or scheduling a dinner with your family, or joining a community group. These small acts of connection can have a big impact on your overall well-being. But let's be real for a moment. We all have obstacles. Life doesn't always go according to plan, and it's easy to let those obstacles get in the way of our goals. Maybe you're dealing with stress, maybe you've fallen off track with your diet or exercise routine, or maybe you just feel overwhelmed by everything on your plate. Trust me, I've been there. But what I want you to remember is that setbacks don't define you. They're just part of the process. And the key to long-term success is figuring out how to get back on track when things don't go as planned. One of the best ways to do that is to give yourself grace. It's easy to beat yourself up when you slip up, but what if you treated yourself with the same compassion you'd offer a friend? What if, instead of feeling guilty when you miss a workout or indulge in a snack, you simply acknowledged it, let it go, and moved on? That's the kind of mindset that will help you stick with these habits for the long term. It's about making small adjustments when things don't go perfectly, and then getting back to what you know works. And I think that's the ultimate takeaway here. Longevity is not about making one huge sweeping change in your life. It's about the small, consistent actions you take every day. The way you eat, the way you move, the way you connect with others. These are all things you can control. And when you start making small, intentional changes that align with the habits of the world's healthiest people, you're setting yourself up for a lifetime of health, happiness, and longevity. So, as you think about all we've discussed today, I want you to ask yourself, what's the one thing I can do today that will move me closer to a longer, healthier life? It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be something that you can build on. Start small, stay consistent, and remember that the journey to living longer is just that, a journey. And the best part, you're not alone. We're all in this together, and I'm excited to see where this journey takes you. Keep moving forward. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with something that might stick with you a little longer than just the facts, figures, and strategies we've talked about. So much of this journey we're on, the journey to living longer, healthier lives, isn't just about ticking off boxes or reaching milestones. It's about mindset. It's about creating a life that feels fulfilling, not just for today, but for decades down the road. It's about small shifts, the little changes we make in our daily habits that compound over time and add up to something much bigger. But before we talk about next steps, I want you to think about something. Imagine yourself 10 years from now. Maybe you're walking through a park, feeling good, surrounded by people you care about. Maybe you're enjoying a moment with your family or friends, laughing without a care in the world. Now, think about the kind of life you want to lead. What do you want your health to look like? What do you want your body to feel like? And what about your mind? How do you want to be feeling when you wake up in the morning? It's a powerful question to ask yourself, because it's the first step in creating a future that's aligned with your deepest desires. And the thing is, the actions you take today, the choices you make, are the ones that are going to shape that future. That might sound a little overwhelming, but it's actually incredibly empowering when you realize that your future self is in your hands. Every decision you make today, no matter how small, is a step toward creating that healthier, more vibrant version of yourself. Whether it's deciding to take a walk after dinner, adding a little more color to your plate with vegetables, or prioritizing time with loved ones, each of these is a building block in the life you're working toward. So, as you listen to these closing words, think about what your next step is. What's one change you can make today that will move you closer to a long, vibrant life? Maybe it's something you've been putting off. Perhaps you've been meaning to work on your sleep habits or finally start meal prepping. Or maybe it's something small, like adding one more walk to your week, or taking a moment to check in with someone you care about. Don't get caught up in the idea that it has to be a big change. Just focus on one thing that feels doable, and let that be the starting point. Now, I want you to think about the idea of overcoming obstacles. It's so easy to get discouraged. Life is messy, and it's full of setbacks. I'm sure you've had moments where you've tried to change something, whether it's your diet, your fitness routine, or your daily habits, and it just didn't stick. You tried for a week, maybe even a month, and then life got busy, or the old habits crept back in. That's completely normal, and it doesn't mean you're failing. It just means you're human. The key isn't in avoiding setbacks, because you can't. They're going to happen. It's in how you respond to them. When you slip up, the best thing you can do is acknowledge it, learn from it, and move forward. The longer you beat yourself up or let guilt take over, the harder it becomes to get back on track. But the more you practice giving yourself grace, the easier it gets to get back up and keep moving forward. Remember, this journey isn't a race. It's a long-term commitment to yourself, to your well-being, and those long-term results, they're built in the small, everyday decisions. Think about all the moments you experience in a day, the walk you take, the meal you prepare, the conversations you have. Every single one of these is an opportunity to make a choice that aligns with the future you want. Every small change, no matter how minor it seems, is progress. And, before you know it, those small choices will start to build a foundation that will carry you toward the life you've envisioned. Now, as we bring this episode to a close, I want you to remember something that's at the heart of this whole conversation. You're in control. Your future is in your hands. There's no one else who can do the work for you, but there's also no one else who can take that first step for you. I believe you have everything you need to make this happen. You have the knowledge, you have the tools, and most importantly, you have the power to choose. So, what are you going to do with that power? Are you going to let life pass by without making any changes? Or are you going to take one small action today that moves you toward the healthiest version of yourself? Think about it. Because that first step doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be taken. And once you do that, once you make the commitment to yourself, it gets easier. Each day becomes a new opportunity to choose health, to choose happiness, and to choose longevity. I'm so grateful that you took the time to join me today and explore these ideas about living a longer, healthier life. I hope this episode inspired you to reflect on what you want your future to look like and how you can start taking action right now. And if you're ready to take that next step, I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a comment or connect with me on social media and share what you're committing to today. Let's keep this conversation going. And don't forget, this podcast is only just the beginning. There's so much more to explore, so many more topics to dive into, and so many more steps to take on this journey toward a longer, happier life. So make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned for more episodes coming your way soon. Until then, take care of yourself. Make that small change today, because believe me, it matters. It all adds up. And before you know it, you'll be living the life you've always imagined. Thank you for being part of this conversation. Keep moving forward, keep evolving, and I'll see you in the next episode.